Brought to you by Penguin.
The Unknown Ajax by Georgette Heyer. Read by Thomas Judd. Chapter 1. Silence had reigned over the dining room since his lordship, midway through the first course, had harshly commanded his widowed daughter-in-law to spare him any more steward's room gossip. As Mrs. Darracott had merely been recounting to her daughter the tale of her activities that day, the snub might have been thought unjust, but she accepted it, if not with equanimity, with a resignation born of custom, merely exchanging a droll look with her daughter, and directing one of warning at her handsome young son. The butler glanced menacingly at the younger of the two footmen, but the precaution was unnecessary. Charles had not been employed at Darracott Place above 6 months, but he was not such a wopstraw as to make the least noise in the performance of his duties when his lordship was out of humour. That was the way Cholacombe described as naggy an old gauger as ever Charles had had the ill fortune to serve. Stiff-rumped, that's what he was, always nabbing the rust or riding grub like he had been for months past. Charles had thought himself lucky to have been taken on at Darracott Place, but he wasn't going to stay above his 12th, not if he knew it. It might suit James, being Kentish-born, to work in a great rambling house stuck down miles from anywhere, in a marsh flat and bare enough to give anyone a fit of the blue devils, and with never a soul outside the family coming next or nigh it. But when Charles went after another place, he was going to London. Let alone he was always one for a bit of life, you could earn extra gelt in London, for there were always errands to be run or notes to be delivered, and you got a shilling every time you were sent off to execute such commissions. If messages had to be carried in the country, it stood to reason they were taken by one of the grooms, while as for the throng of open-fisted guests his dad had told him it would be his duty to wait upon, well, a house full of guests might have been what his dad was used to in his day, but it wasn't what they was used to at Darracott Place. Such visions as Charles had indulged when he had first blessed his good fortune at being hired to fill the post of second footman in a nobleman's establishment. A proper take-in that had been, and so he would tell his dad. Dad, honourably retired from employment as butler to a gentleman of fashion, had assured him that to be hired to serve in a lord's country seat did not mean that he would be immured in rural fastness throughout the year. My lord, said Dad, would certainly retire to Kent during the winter months, but at the beginning of the season he would remove to his London house, and at the end of the season, said Dad, the chances were that he would hire a house in Brighton for the summer months. And from time to time, of course, he would be absent, visiting friends in other parts of the country, during which periods his servants would enjoy a great deal of leisure, and might even be granted leave to go on holiday. But nothing like that had happened at Darracott Place since Charles had first entered its portals. My lord, whose grim mouth and arctic stare could set stronger knees than Charles's knocking together, remained in residence all the year round, neither entertaining nor being entertained. And no use for anyone to tell Charles that this was because the family was in mourning for Mr. Granville Darracott and his son, Mr. Oliver, both drowned off the coast of Cornwall in an ill-fated boating expedition. Charles might only have been second footman at Darracott Place for a couple of months when that disaster occurred, but no one could gammon him into thinking that my lord cared a spangle for his heir. If you were to ask him, Charles would say that my lord cared for no one but Mr. Richmond. He certainly couldn't abide Mr. Matthew Darracott, who was the last of his sons left alive. While as for Mr. Claude, who was the younger of Mr. Matthew's 2 sons, it was as much as anyone could do not to burst out laughing to see my lord look at him as if he was a cockroach or a bedbug. Nor, though he didn't look at him like that, could you think he cared a groat for Mr. Vincent neither. While as for poor Mrs. Darracott, as kind a lady as you'd find anywhere, even she was a bit of a prattle-box. It seemed like she had only to open her mouth for my lord to give her one of his nasty set-downs. He didn't, it was true, do that to Miss Anthea, but that was probably because Miss Anthea wasn't scared of him, like her ma, and would maybe give as good as she got. It wasn't because he was fond of her, as you'd think her granddad would be.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?